Yeah, this one's a bit of a mess. Ultraviolet. Ultraviolet, released in 2006, written and directed by Kurt Wimmer. He wrote and directed Equilibrium, so I had high hopes for this. I really did. Production budget of $30 million with a domestic take of $18 million, an international take of $12 million for a worldwide total of $31 million, giving a box office profit of $1 million. Now, as I've discovered after watching this wonderful reviewer, these numbers don't actually take into account the marketing and all the other attributed costs that go with putting a movie out there. So, yeah, this is definitely running into the negatives. I don't know enough about that side of the movie stuff. All I can really talk about is the numbers I've got. So that's what I'm going to continue to run with. But just remember that when it's this close, it's not really a profit. Starring Mila Jovovich, Cameron Bright, Nick Chalond, and Sebastian Andrew. And this guy, who actually had more to do with the plot than anyone else in the movie, but wasn't a title card actor for whatever reason. Still can't believe this was done by the guy who gave us Equilibrium. Anyhow, let's get on with the autopsy. Characters. Okay, so yeah, this was dull. This was not a good example of character work or presentation or anything. Actually, the only interesting character in this movie was, again, this guy, the doctor, the vampire doctor, Dr. Vamp. He was kind of cool. You got some emotion from him. You got some feeling for him. He cared. He wasn't the super fighter type. He was just the guy. He was the guy that gave the most on screen. That actually doesn't really make him the best character, I suppose, but he's the only one you're connected to. That's it. That's him. Him alone. Violet. Yeah, alright, cold, calculating, emotionless, kind of. Well, she does have emotion. She brings some emotion to the table every now and then, but it's just rare. She's either a bit of an emotional wreck over her past in this kid, or she's a cold killing machine that seems to have zero emotion at all. If there'd been more focus on Miller's actual acting ability and her screen presence, as opposed to her looks and her midriff, the character might have been a lot more interesting. The villain, who cares? Actually, he was almost a carbon copy of the big bad from Equilibrium, except Equilibrium did it better. Now, the comparison to Equilibrium is going to come up a lot because it looks very similar. So you can't avoid that comparison, which is unfortunate, because it's not fair. And then you got the ally that turns into a bad guy. I think his name was Neva. You don't care at all. He's a moron. He's presented as an idiot. A savage, brooding, mysterious twat. Really. Oh, and then you got all his henchmen, which looked really cool for the 8 seconds they had on screen. And then they were brutally dispatched. And that's it. I mean, there was nothing going on here. Oh, the kid? The kid was meant to present as an emotionless, near lifeless automaton. And he did that pretty well. Unfortunately, that's all he did. And then, who cares? Yeah, characters are going to be short in this because they sucked. I was generally unimpressed with the characters in this very shallow, two-dimensional movie. What am I going to give characters? Let's see. Alright, characters get a 2. They'd be lower, but they didn't make me mad. I just didn't care. So yeah, characters, 2. Story! It actually managed to be even more disappointing than the characters were. So bad. This is a generic, super generic storyline that we have seen before, and it's been done better. It's uninspiring. It's flaccid. That's the word for it. This story is flaccid. It's just there. Alright, fine. Story. Alright, you got hemiphages, vampires, are a blood disorder, a small dwindling group because they die out very quick. They burn out fast. 12 to 15 year lifespan, and I only know that because I looked it up online. It's got not mentioned in the movie at all. That would have been really helpful. Anyway, they're being hunted down by the main medical institution to eliminate them because they are a threat to humanity despite the very, very small number. They need to be wiped out because they're a blight on the world. And as a result, the world has become very, very controlled. Totalitarian, authoritarian government, etc., etc., etc. We've seen it all before. No big surprises here. The vampires have figured out that the ministry has a weapon that they're going to use to kill everyone. The weapon is a biological weapon. The weapon also turns out to be hidden in a small child. Cue the moral dilemma for Violet. They go on the run. The ministry's chasing them. There's a lot of fighting. There's a lot of chasing. and then they get the kid, and then they kill the kid, but the kid's not really dead, and then she goes chasing after them to rescue the kid and save herself and save the world and defeat the bad guys, and there you go. And unfortunately, even my scattered description of the story is actually better than the way it's presented in the movie, because I've got some external knowledge from reading up on this, purely out of frustration at the fact that I didn't know what the hell was going on. You end up having to connect your own dots, which would make it a mystery if there was anything to be solved. But there's nothing to be solved here, there's just stuff to be tolerated. If this movie had just 10 minutes more plot, and just set itself up a little bit better, and just spaced things out a bit, and didn't just make it one artistic punch-up after another, then it would probably be at least serviceable. Almost okay. If it took the high concept of equilibrium and aeon flux, and then ripped all the guts out of it, and just kind of like bleached it, and then presented it, that's it. There you go. So, what am I going to give this? Okay, story. For the sheer fact that it's been done so much better in so many different ways, this gets a 1.75 for story. Look and feel. Okay, so this gets better. It's not spectacular, but it gets better in many ways. Visually speaking, artistically speaking, this is very nice most of the time. Equilibrium is going to be the comparison point along with Aeon Flux, actually. This movie looks very similar to those ones. This is like a not so great reflection of them, to be honest. Stark art industrial style of building and presentation and design. You've got beautiful tunnels and archways, very vibrant walls on very clean floors within which they can then make a mess out of and put blood everywhere and bits and pieces and damage, which really stand out. Artistically, this is quite gorgeous. Costumes, architecture, set pieces, weapons, the stance, the flow of the fighting, the way it's all cut together, the way it's designed and presented on screen is great. About 80% of the time, maybe 75%. The rest of the time, it's a bit of a disaster. It's ugly. And it's usually the incredible over-reliance on CGI backgrounds and CGI things like helicopters and chase sequences. It was getting painful to watch at times. I'm not kidding. It's just not good. Especially for some of the long shots of the city. If they'd take the money they spent on CGI, and in 2006, this wouldn't have been cheap, and spent that on a miniature or a bigature city to have your macro camera go over the top of, that would have been much cooler. A much more impressive effect. You could get your smoke effects. You could blend it. You could go in a different artistic style that would blend quite well with this movie. And that's a real shame. That really is a shame. It's a bit of a killer for this movie because it's stylistically and artistically, as I've said, very, very vibrant, very, very interesting to look at. But then they kept mucking it up. They keep making a hash out of it. And then some of the worst editing and just choppy chop chop that you've ever seen. It's got some ugly mixes going on in here. Just nasty and pointless. And it just jumps and jumps and jumps and jumps. And you're here and you're here and you're here. And there's very little connective tissue to this. And the only way that you know they're connected sometimes is because they reuse the same set, same shot, same angle all the time. As if the only two places that this whole movie happens is in the Ministry for Medical Sciences and this crappy looking mall, which actually looks like a cleaned up lower deck of the Babylon 5 space station. Yeah, it's not great. It's pretty bad. And some of the choreography, actually the fight scenes, again, about 80% of those fight scenes are great. And then you got 20% just like, why did you do that? Why do we care? We don't care. It's when it's Violet versus the other hemiphages. That's fight sequence. It's trash. Pathetic. Pointless. It's unnecessary. No, I didn't like anything about it. All the other fight scenes were at least artistic. This was just stupid. It's a real shame that this movie has such incredible artistic style and so little substance. Unfortunately, as much as I'd like to give it a pass on a 3, it's not going to make it. If they just stuck the landing and kept within their own, I don't know, design ethos, it would have got a 3 or even a 3.5, but unfortunately this one's landing on a 2.75. Because as I've said, as good as it is every now and then, the bad bits just gut it. They're just not good. Script and dialogue, yeah, that's easy. It's terrible. No, it's not good. It is not good at all. The dialogue is pedestrian and predictable. The twist in the movie you guessed early on. Presentation of the characters are just choppy. Apart from this guy. Again, this guy. This guy is the only one that actually delivers in any way that is good. He's the best actor in the whole movie. Violet's lines, 80% of them are trash. The other 20% is bearable. You know, that's about it. The main bad guy, he's nearly the worst thing in the movie. His dialogue is so very, again, predictable and so supervillain. But the worst stuff comes from that clown Neva, this dude again. Just, what was that? He was obviously putting 110% into what he's got. It's the direction that just made him look boring. It was really hard to watch, actually. It didn't even manage to enhance the story. Didn't even forward things properly. I mean, the exposition we got from Doc Vamp was at least interesting, kind of, or at least it was the only interesting thing, therefore you liked it more. And he presented all right, so, you know, you're kind of happy to hear him talk. But there was just nothing. There was no substance. There was nothing to get attached to. There's nothing that you cared about. None of this. You didn't care about any of this. None of this made you care. And even when you found out all the secrets, you still didn't care. I don't care. Script and dialogue. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. Gets a 2. Fun factor. No, not really. Let's see, of the hour and 27 minutes in this movie, I had about 10 to 15 minutes of fun. I was just waiting for this to end, or at least to get to something good, or at least interesting to talk about, and there wasn't much. Fun factor. I was bored. 1.5. However, I have since discovered there is an unrated extended cut version out there somewhere. And I will admit, I'm kind of keen to see that. I want to see what the extra time and the re-editing and the reworking of this movie actually does for it. Now I'm very curious. I'm going to go about finding that one, and I'm going to watch it and I'll review it and tell you how that goes. Final score, well, you add this mess together and you get a flat 10. So there we go. That's Ultraviolet. Yay. Nah. Terrible. If you really want to know what's in it, go watch the highlights on YouTube. That's probably going to take up about 5 minutes of your life. Has anyone else seen this? Does anyone actually enjoy it? If you enjoyed it, why? I'm really curious as to what you enjoyed about this movie. Unless it's, of course, your guilty pleasure trash movie, at which point I totally get that. Enjoy it as much as you like. But as usual, I hope you're having a great week, that you're keeping safe in this current viral climate. I hope you enjoyed my review. If you did, like and subscribe. Most of all, have a good one and make some time to watch a movie.